Hey, what's going on? Welcome to AngularAir. I am your host, Justin Schwarzenberger, and today's episode is episode number 200. Pretty crazy, pretty awesome. Stoked we're here. Our topic for today is the Angular CDK Data Tables. So let's get into it. Let's say hi to our panelists, and then we'll meet our guest, and we'll learn about our topic. Joining us today, we've got Bonnie Brennan. Bonnie, what's going on?
Hi, how are you doing? Good to be here.
I am doing great. It's good to have you here, as always. Mike Brocky's with us. Mike, what's going on?
Not too much. Excited about today's topic because it's something that I'm hoping to get some time at work to play with soon. So, a little inside scoop, a little preparation.
Nice.
Nice.
And our guest today is Zack DeRose. Zack, how's it going?
Hey, everyone. Doing great. This has been a cool day.
Awesome. We are stoked to have you here today. Zack, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and let them know who you are?
Sure. So I am a lowly Angular developer.
No, you're not lowly anymore. You work at Powerwall now. Now you're a rock star.
I'm rocketing in prestige, apparently. But I started out as a lowly Angular developer, and I was really interested in NGRX and happened to see Jeff Delaney's channel, who was with us on NG Houston. And I really loved his videos, and I got mixed up with the guys at Angular in Depth and helped them with an article, and was talking with Jeff Delaney about helping him. So doing writing an article for him that he would then take and make into a video on his channel. And so we did, and I made this one on Angular CDK Tables, and that's how that's kind of how this article came about. And then a little bit while later, Narwhal tweeted about hiring people, and I sent them my resume, and I'm here now. So it's been really neat just seeing all those connections kind of wire up in the Angular community. It's baffling how cool that is to me. So
it's a small community.
Yeah,
and I stumbled across you.
So many nice people too, so it makes it real easy.
So I was doing some fancy stuff with the Angular CDK table not that long ago. And I was trying to do something a little bit out of the box that was just a little more advanced than the documentation that I was able to find. And I was trying very hard to find an example of this code that I needed somewhere out there. And I stumbled across your article, which was really close to what I was trying to do, but it didn't exactly answer my question. So I reached out to you and I was like, hey, you're trying to do this thing. Do you know how to do this thing? And so we actually had a little bit of then that's how our friendship started, because you actually were really cool and you pointed me in the right direction that I needed to go to figure it out. And ever since then, now we're friends. So then I asked you to come on NG Houston and talk about that, and then we jumped you up here because it's really great and I think it was helpful. So I sent you to Justin. The big leagues.
Thanks, Bonnie. You rock.
Well, you rock. Your article was really good. I think it was really helpful. It helped me, that's for sure.
Cool.
Plus, it's great when you reach out to somebody that you don't know on Twitter, and it's like when you're asking for help with code, they don't really have any obligation to help you at all. Like, who are you? You know. So it's really great when you reach out to somebody and you don't really know what's going to happen, and then they answer and they're so nice, and you were so nice to me. So yeah. So here we are.
Cool. Yeah, I've really been enjoying watching that article. I actually Google search it every now and then, just Angular CDK tables. I find I keep fighting the official documentation for the top spot with that article. But yeah, it's pretty cool. So it's really neat that you found that. That's I think that's a year old now. But yeah, it's cool to see that it's still helpful to people. So yeah.
And Justin, I'm going to go put a link in the chat to Zack's article.
Yeah, that would be great.
Perfect.
Do you want to go ahead and we'll get that on screen, Justin?
Yeah, let's do that. Ready to share some stuff?
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's do it. Okay. Am I doing it right? Let's see. Did that work?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
Very cool.
Can you maybe zoom in a little bit? Yeah.
Because Zack has that massive monitor.
Yeah. Jeff Cross set me up with these massive monitors that I didn't want, but am appreciative of. So, yeah, that was really cool of them. This was just going back to me and Jeff Delaney. At the top of the article, here's his video on it that kind of gives a more streamlined view, and the article kind of takes things a bit further in depth. And so check out the video too if you're interested in the topic, because I think Jeff has this amazing talent for taking like a topic like this and condensing it down to like 5 minutes and making that 5 minutes really great. So, but yeah, in my article, we kind of walk through these 3 steps. We're going to take you through just the CDK. Oh, and Jeff Cross is coming by. Let me turn off the presentation real quick.
What's happening?
I'm showing stuff.
Are you going to work it all today?
Can y'all hear him?
We can hear him.
Hanging out with Bonnie again.
Bonnie
and broccoli.
Yeah. Do you want to stop the share so you can see him?
Yeah.
Come on, Jeff, get the picture.
All right, but you're sharing your screen still. Okay, let's see.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, stop screen share. Yeah.
How do I do that?
I think it's on the left-hand side and Google.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
It's right down there.
Oh, there you go. Good call. There you go.
Jeff Cross.
Hey.
I just emailed Shorty.
What's going on, Jeff?
And
I like Mike.
Sorry, Zach's not getting any work done.
Oh, he probably can't hear us.
I've
I've interacted with everybody here. All right, see you later.
He says bye.
All right.
Bye, Jeff.
I hope you didn't have work to do today, Zach.
I do. I'll get it done. The work will get done. But yeah, here. Let me. Do I have to start up the share again? Let's see.
Yeah.
There you go. Sorry about that.
Let's go.
There we go. Okay, so we're gonna walk through just the Angular CDK table API real quick. Then we're just gonna drop down some Bootstrap on top. So the really neat thing about the CDK tables is it's pretty much a material table from the Angular material library that's just like stripped of its materialness, right? So it's a table and it's built the same way as a material table, but you can just kind of apply you could just drop on top another CSS framework and kind of spit out this neat looking table that leverages all the cool stuff that they built for material tables, which is kind of what kind of spawned this article. And then we're going to just add some features on top of that. So just going into the simple table, this GIF kind of shows where we're going to end up. And we'll skip some of this stuff. We're just kind of setting up a new project and generating a table component and getting our modules set up. And here we go. So this is at the most basic piece of it. We're going to have a table data source. And for this example, I use a behavior subject, which works as a nice, source of truth. Bonnie, we were talking about like the analogy of RxJS is like this machine that's kind of like water pipes coming down. So the behavior subject here, yeah, I really enjoy that
analogy. I think, and actually, if you have time to just review that analogy real quick, I mean, at our level, like we are pretty good with RxJS because we do it so much. But there are so many beginners that like I struggled with RxJS a lot when I was first learning. Like I was trying to wrap my head around it, and same thing with ngRx. And I think that analogies, especially like your plumbing analogy, it just helps. Some people are very visual, and that kind of stuff helps me a lot rather than just reading all this text.
Well, it's so cool because when RxJS 6 came out, they kind of came out with that way of combining your operators together with the pipe. So you just kind of take your observable to .pipe and then put on some operators in a list below. And I feel like that really solidifies the metaphor, right? Because it's like, here's this behavior subject we've got here. This is kind of like our water main, right? Like this is our source of truth that we're throwing data into. And then we're going to take this source of truth and we're going to kind of manipulate it. And we're going to do that by piping on an operator. It's kind of just like a little pipe coming off of that main. And we're going to do some stuff to it. We're going to maybe change the data format a little bit. We're going to sort it or filter it. And then it's going to come out. And we're going to, so that's kind of our pipes. And then we got to turn on the faucet by subscribing. And that kind of has our data flow in the way we want it, the way we built our machine to give it to us.
I love it. Don't forget, Zach, your monitor's huge. You always have to.
Oh, yeah. Is that good? Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. So this is like us right now setting up that water main. So right now we've just got I'm using Heroes. So this is from like one of my side project games, characters from that game. So I just pulled some heroes from it. So it's like the Angular hero demonstration. So here's a hero object up top here. Just a name. You got some types and you got some stats on him. And here's another hero object. And he's got his own stats. And we're also going to have, and this is something, if I was doing this again, I'd probably change, but I made the displayed columns as a behavior subject too. And this is kind of where, in a lot of places here, this is when I was getting more set up with RxJS. I feel like behavior subjects are a great way of kind of like delving into it and getting into it at first. It's like a nice way of kind of cheating a little, because with a behavior subject, you can always just do .value, and that'll just like synchronously give you the value that's being held inside of the behavior subject. So it is an observable too, so you can still subscribe to it or throw on a pipe async to it. And but yeah, you can do everything that you could do to an observable to the behavior subject. So
before you move on, I have a real quick question. So so you have two different behavior subjects here, or observables, however you want to structure your data, or however that's coming through. But you have one that's your data and one that's the columns. Is that a hard requirement of the CDK data table that those two types of information are separate observables? I know that some data tables and from some frameworks that I've used in the past, where the first record ends up being the column names, and then the data follows. Is the separation something that's set with the CDK data table?
Right. So with the CDK data table API, you can pass in. So there's like a data source in our table. I think I have it right down here. Maybe look at it. Yeah. So there's the data source for our table. And that can be an observable, but that can also just be an array as well, I'm pretty sure. Okay. So you can do an observable, and the observable is nice because you can kind of react to things, you controlling it with your own machine you built with RxJS to pipe that stuff in.
That makes sense.
And your columns, I think I'll have columns just a bit further here. So you'll see I'm doing what I said with the behavior subject here, where I'm just taking the value of that synchronously. So I'm really just relying on Angular change detection for this. And you could just that displayed columns doesn't need to be a behavior subject or an observable. It can just be an array. Okay. And we could just rely on Angular change detection to do that. But what I was attempting to do with this, I think, was make it so that when the displayed column changes, it also changes the data that gets sent to the table data source, which is actually superfluous because if you take something out of your array, so let's just say we put a new array up there that was missing one of the columns, you can still pipe the same data in, and we're going to set up so the CDK table API kind of has you putting these ng container tags in for each one of your columns. So instead of, like, before I came across this tool, when I would build a table, it was kind of like I would have a ng-for loop on a table row tag. And so that would be my way of generating my table, where I kind of go row first and then say for each row, here's what each column should look like. The CDK table API kind of takes that and turns it on its head. So we're going to provide these ng containers with the CDK column def directive, and that's going to let us build what our columns look like. And then we just kind of throw the array into the data source here. And that's how we pass the data to the API, and it kind of spits out the table the way we were specifying it to look. So you can see in the container here, all we're doing is we're saying, here's the table head, and then here's a cell. And this row right here is just for kind of thinking in terms of that ng for loop. This row is just the data at this index, whatever index we happen to be at in the array. And we're just going to take that guy and we're going to show his name for here because we're showing the hero's name inside of this cell.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Too as well. So I noticed here we got the table tag, the th, and the td, just native elements, right, that are part of the HTML spec. Is this something that, and then we've got the, I'm assuming maybe directives, but they could be component selectors as well, but like the CDK table, right, applied to those. Is that something that's the workflow for the CDK approach to the data table where you're using these, regular elements, and with like material design, does it have its own like material design table?
Yeah. So all you got to do to take a CDK table and make it a map table is you just take CDK and replace it with map. And then you import a different module inside of your module. So,
but then in the, like to do the material table, you're saying like that, that directive that's on there, the CDK dash, would just, you change that to map. So you'd still be using a table element to create your tables, even if you were using material?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So, and I was looking into this, like with some other thing, they actually do it where, so like for a button, they'll have the component selector be a component that has a directive on it like this, or what looks like a directive on it. So it's actually a component, but it looks like a directive. So I think that's what they're doing for tables here as well, which I thought was really neat. I actually didn't know you could do that when I was looking at the material source for this. So.
Yeah, so that I really love that about the component selector, that you're able to do like a attribute selector type of deal with that, so you can put it on native elements, right? The one challenge I have with that though is that I think the style guide, essentially the setup stuff in the Angular CLI, has a rule that says you shouldn't do use custom elements for their selector, and so I end up having to like manually turn that off, and I've been meaning to ask, like, could we maybe switch that by default so people could be know that they can do this sort of thing? Because I think it's really powerful, right, especially to be able to use these native elements but still apply this component structure to it.
Yeah, I came across that same problem actually. Like I was setting up, I was working on this project where we were working on buttons, and I was setting up some CI for it, and that was the first time I guess I manually ran the linter. And that's when it was like, nope, can't do this. I'm like, but material does this. What's going on? So that was, I had to go in and turn that off too. So that's really neat that we both had that experience. But yeah.
Cool. I have a question too.
Yeah.
And well, first of all, just going to add another point about selectors is that you're not just limited to a single selector. So if you wanted to have, if you were defining something called CDK table or myfoo, you could have that be a tag name. You could have it be an attribute. You could have it be a class, any type of selector. You could define multiple selectors to limit it by a comma on a component.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. So if you want to provide different ways to be able to use your components.
Right. Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say another thing interesting I noticed about the material stuff was they were, so before I looked at this, I thought the only way you added an input to a component was through the input decorator. They're actually doing it where they have it inside of the component decorator. They specify the inputs, and they're actually using mixins to generate all their different the inputs that you pass in. And so they just kind of say, well, this one can disable, this one can do this one can ripple, and that's how they kind of pass in those inputs. I thought that was like the neatest thing ever. I'm really interested in how we can get more like kind of object composition into Angular stuff, because I think there's a lot of potential power in there. And I think Victor from Narwhal had an article about some of the stuff with Ivy and how to potentially get some of that stuff, more of that stuff in. Where you're kind of composing elements or components instead of just like statically building them with classical inheritance. So, yeah.
I did have another question though.
Yeah.
Going back to the example that's on your screen now on line 6, where you're actually interpolating the row.name. Just to be clear, you can do anything you want there. So if by scenario, I was doing like shipping boxes, and in my data, I just had like the length, height, and width of the boxes. I could actually do the math to multiply those together to get the volume, correct?
Oh,
so
yeah.
I have full control over what that is being displayed. I can use pipes and do other different formatting functions within that interpolation to show whatever data I need to, or massage the data within there to be able to do that.
So, so I've done at my previous job, I did a lot of the stuff we used relied heavily on tables. And one of the things I learned from dealing with them so much is it's really helpful to specify like a table model, because it wasn't always the case that we'd always have the same base element that we wanted to show in our table, right? Like some of the objects were a little bit different. Like we'd want to show this kind of object, but then this kind of object, and they kind of both have names, but some of them don't have the same properties as the other. So it was always really helpful to kind of write some sort of reducer or just converter to convert from that object to the table data model. That's just like a TypeScript interface. And then that makes it really easy to kind of do that stuff. So you can do this inside of your templates, right? So you can just say, well, here's my name, here's my column, and you can actually then just put an ngFor on your container here. And then you don't even have to specify a column per each one. You can kind of just say, this is how I want to do it. I've already taken care of, you know, what's going to be in each one of these inside of my TypeScript, which I think is kind of nicer too, just separating those concerns. And then you just kind of let your template be your template, right? So I don't know. Does that make sense, Mike?
It does. Which, I mean, you basically have full control over what's being rendered. But as Justin was talking about earlier, you have to kind of wrap your mind over the fact that you're defining things on a column by column basis, not on a row by row basis.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that actually works. That's how I tend to think of tables anyways. So I think that works out really well. So yeah, so you'll see that a lot of what we're doing in this article is just kind of, right now we have this really simple machine, right? Where we're just kind of saying, here's some hero data, and we're going to use that as our data source. And I think the next thing we do is we add like this interesting, trying to make it a little bit more interesting, where we say, you know, here's where we're at now, given the code in that example, this kind of static read-only data. So we're going to add a level up button in a new column here. So on the right-hand side, we're going to stick a little level up here, and that's going to level up our heroes, and it's going to increase their stats a little bit. So so that's exactly what we do here. Just add a new ng container here, and we have to whoops, take this level up column def and add it to our column names, and then we just say, you know, here's the button you can see in my cell. Here's the button, and we click it, and we'll level up, and we're just going to pass in the hero's name for right now to say this hero is going to go level up. And then
I got a quick question about that.
Yeah.
So what if like you don't have you want to add another column, but you don't necessarily want to have something in like the column definitions, right? And maybe you're just going to reuse data from something else. Do you need to add it to the column def for those particular columns? Is that, I mean, or to the column, yeah, definition list or whatever?
Right. So the thing that's controlling how many columns you have is that columns array, or I guess I'm using a behavior subject in my example here. So that's what says, you know, this is each one of your columns, and here's a name for it. So it's kind of like indexing each one of those columns. So to add a new column, you do have to add something to that array, because that's going to determine how many columns you have and how they're indexed. And so you just pass the index. What you do is you pass the index to the CDK column def. I'm not aware of any other way to do that. So I think that's how you would do it. And then, you know, you still have at the row level. So that's kind of column level, and then row level, we just use this directive here, the cell def and the header def. I think we could use that too, to just say, here's the row we're in. That's not what makes sense for the header, but it makes sense for the cell. So, and then our row has the guy there, and we just say, take his name. They happen to map all the columns I use happen to map to stuff in my previous example. But here with the level up, you can see it doesn't map. There's no level up property on my hero object. So it doesn't have to be tied that way, but it's just, if you're using like the table model example I was talking about with Mike, that makes it real nice to map those so that they're the same name. Because then you can use the ngFor to kind of tie everything together.
Yeah.
So,
and just to explain something for people who are looking at this for the first time, that button there on line 5, that click event is something that you're handling in your containing component, correct? That's a method that you have there. Nothing special within the data table that handles the level up. That's just an event that you can capture to be able to go to that row and do whatever business logic that you want based off of that data.
Right. So and that's why I pass in the row.name, so I know which row we're talking about. So I know which hero we're talking about, because each one of our rows is a hero. And that's kind of what I do in the next step. So before we just had the table data behavior subject, but now we're kind of putting a level on top and saying, here's a dictionary of our heroes. So we get sort of the constant time lookup of having a dictionary, and you'll see it's indexed by their name, which is why we pass the name in up there. And what we're going to do, I think, is we're going to take this behavior subject, and I'm going to subscribe to it, and whenever it changes, I'm going to call next on my other behavior subject, which is not the way you want to do this. I just want to make that clear. Like, this is older stuff, and this is where when I was talking about relying on behavior subjects, this is where I did it where I probably shouldn't have done it. This
is an example of how to use the CDK data table, not how to utilize RxJS, and that's fine. You're going through and you're using a structure that works, and it just may not be the best approach for how to use this with RxJS.
Exactly. And I think I might want to go back, since I did this with Body 2, like kind of apologizing for my own code. I think I might want to go back and redo my examples here if I get a chance. But so what you want to do is this probably could remain a behavior subject, since this is at the end of the day your source of truth. And what we'll want to do for our table is we'd say that would just be an observable, and we define it by saying that observable is equal to this hero's dot pipe, and then we're just going to map it, I think, to start from this dictionary object to an array. And that array is what we're going to pass into our data source, and that's going to hydrate our data, and it just kind of goes from there. So it's this going back to that metaphor of the machine with the water pipes. That's what we're building here. It's just as we add features, our machine's going to get a bit more complicated, but it's also pretty nicely modular. So we can just kind of add a feature, like we'll see when we add sort and add search. We're just adding a feature, and that usually would map to like adding a new operator onto inside of our pipe. So that's what we're doing here. You'll see table data source. This is where the other behavior subject comes in, and this is where I'm doing the thing I shouldn't do, which is subscribing inside of my component and calling next on my other behavior subject. So it's almost like if we're talking about building that machine, it's like I got two water mains right now, but one's kind of dependent on the other. And because I'm not using the async pipe, I'm having to manage that subscription by myself. So if I don't unsubscribe from this, it's just it's going to leak, right? Like it's just going to keep continuing after the component's gone. And I don't want to have that happen. So I got to kind of be mindful of that. It's so much easier to just have it as an observable, just stick it in your template and put an async pipe on that. That'll kind of make everything better for you. And that's kind of what happens inside the API when you use the data source. If you put just an observable in there, the CDK is going to manage that subscription for you, so you don't have to worry about it, which is what you want to do, and not this. But so that's the way this would look. Kind of invert this a little bit so it's not using behavior subjects, and you can kind of see the better path forward. And then we're just going to write our level up function. So here you can see this would just be inside of our component. We're going to take that hero name we passed in. We're going to look it up inside of our dictionary. We're going to increment all the stats a little bit and just kind of jam them back in there using the spread operator. And that's going to make a new object that we're just going to put inside of our source of truth now. So what we're doing is we're kind of adjusting our that water main to say here's the new stuff that's coming down the pipe now. And then when our machine's all set up, that's just going to nicely flow, and that's all the code we're going to have to write, is just passing this into the data source directive. And so now you can see, so this is a stack blitz right here. If you're watching if you're on the article, you can just click to follow into stack blitz and see all the code. You can see it working pretty nicely here. So next thing we do is we just take the same idea and we're going to apply the Bootstrap CSS framework on top. And so really what this comes down to, I'm just going to gloss over adding the framework to your library real quick, because I think that's probably better to read. So here's where things start to get a little bit interesting. We're going to have this kind of superlatives object that's going to say for however many heroes we have, let's just determine real quick what the highest for each stat is and what the lowest for each stat is. And the idea is we can then make the highest one green and the lowest one red. And so what we're going to do right here, we're just kind of building this object every time the hero's data source changes. So remember, our level up is changing that hero's data source, and then that's going to kind of get piped through here, and superlatives are going to kind of populate themselves, and then we'll have a superlatives things to look at inside of our data table, so we can check, is this guy the highest attack, yes or no? If yes, make him green. If he's lowest, make him red. So we build this superlatives object, and using behavior subjects again. Probably better to use an observable here, but we're just going to call next and pass that object in. And then we can just apply to each one of our columns this ng class directives onto the cell. So this is going to add table success, which will make it green if the superlatives at highest value is equal to the row name. So remember, we're using the hero name as kind of our index here. And same with the red. And I just make I make level up a little bit interesting, so it's not just adding one every time in this little piece of code. But yeah,
at this point, like the superlatives and the stuff like that, that's not really anything that's tied into the data table at that point, right? I mean,
right. So
logic inline in places where you need it, in kind of independent of the data table.
Exactly, and that's where kind of like the strength of the API shows. I think is like really all the API does for you is say, give me an observable that contains an array, and then you can do whatever you want to it. And that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a big important point, right? Because a lot of times there'll be other data table type solutions out there that we'll use, and if you want to dive in and do things granular like this, it's a challenge, right? Because maybe you don't have access to the full template, or it's just tricky to get to those pieces. And so it shows really well how it's like, okay, it's just like you're used to raw HTML, table tags, all this stuff, and you're really able to compose what you need. But then common stuff that we do, to wrap, repeat those rows and data, that's handled for us, which is cool.
Right. Yeah, so it's awesome in that respect, because now all we're building, like in terms of what we're talking about, this is all our RxJS stuff. Like we're talking about basic, application logic inside of the sort of a RxJS mindset, so like a streaming paradigm. And that's all we have to worry about now. Like we don't have to think of this in terms of a table anymore. We can just think of it as, well, how do I make an interesting feature to build into my RxJS machine? Kind of that's all contained inside this component. So you can see this is kind of messed up from when I was showing Bonnie this, but as we level this guy up, he's eventually going to have all the best stats, so he's going to go all green. And if we level this guy up, he's eventually going to lose his reds. So they're going to go on to someone else who will have the new lowest. And so you can see like everything's kind of nicely reactively happening. And the only code we read is what we looked at. So we just said, here's a superlative observable, or kind of just think of it as a stream. Here's a superlative stream, And we're going to kind of combine those things, and that's going to result in this data showing up. And it's really great.
So basically, your superlatives there are just essentially max and min. But like you said, those possibilities are endless, whether or not somebody wants to do standard deviation or some sort of like color scale or anything else that they want to be able to do to relate the data to each other, to basically turn raw data into information in whatever way makes sense for their application.
Right. Like another cool application would be like if you just put something to select one of these things, and you want to highlight other rows that share a property or something like that. That's really easy to do here. You just say, here's the selected thing, and here's the property we care about, and let's figure out any other row that has that property. Let's make them a slightly different color. So yeah, stuff like that's really easy to do.
Without just using table and TR and TD tags.
Right. So yeah, so the next part of this, and this might be getting too into the weeds for a live talk, but we're going to do what we do is we add paging, we add searching, we add sorting, and they're each kind of like modularly added to the feature set of this table we've already built. And it's just like if this was properly constructed, it would translate to here's a new operator in the pipe, and this is going to show you for the given page. We're on page 1 right now, so that means you get items 1 through 5 of the array, versus if you're on another page, you get items X through X plus 5 or something like that.
So to be clear, you have 3 things listed there: paging, searching, and sorting. Of those 3, which are provided from the CDK data table?
So Bonnie was saying she thought there was a way that paging is provided inside of the API. What I do inside of my example here is I'm just using RxJS to determine. I make a new observable called data on page.
Okay.
And then another observable just called current page. And I'm combining the behavior subject we had from the previous step with the currently selected page to say, here's the data on the page right now. So it's really, again, nothing about the table API that we're using here. It's just all RxJS.
Okay.
So we're just saying, pretty much instead of giving it everything, we're applying a filter to say which index to show. And that's the same with what we're going to do for search. We're going to say if it matches the search filter, it gets in the array. If not, it doesn't. And sorting is just sorting that array. So each one of those could easily map to just a nice operator here. And that's not quite how I do it here because I'm using the behavior subjects, but I think it translates pretty well. I think I'll be able to update some of this code to reflect that pretty easily. So you can see here, so this is doing exactly what I was talking about. There's a current page, there's a page size, so you could dynamically change that if you wanted even. And then here's the data on page, which is going to act as our new table source. So whatever's in this array, just throw it up on there on the table. So it's kind of like we're managing that pagination ourselves, right? So yeah, that's kind of what's happening. And you'll see I'm using combined latest to kind of take all these sources, flatten them down to a single stream, and then subscribing to that. Again, probably not the right way of doing it, but like you should just probably pipe onto this combined latest to do stuff, and have some new observable is equal to this. So rather than this data page.next being called at the end of the subscribe, it would simply be right up here. This data on page is equal to combine latest pipe map, and then take these 3 things and do this and return return on page. I don't know if y'all followed that. It's kind of contrived, but that's the way you want to do it. I'll update the code to reflect that soon. So yeah, I think as you what I do bring in real quick is I take the ng Bootstrap pagination component from the ng Bootstrap library, and that just gives me pagination. But I'm doing something really similar with this, right? Like I'm just passing in the behavior subjects. some values associated with it. So here's our collection size is just saying, you know, here's 20, there's 20 total heroes. My current page size, I think, was 5, but that could change. And you'll notice we're using just .value on these behavior subjects. So what that's doing is just synchronously taking that value. And that's kind of like the reason why I used behavior subjects a lot when I started, was because you have that option. And now we just have Angular change detection kind of working against our behavior subjects, so that every time their value changes, Angular change detection is going to fire and just going to update our inputs to this pagination component. And then if the user ever clicks something to change the current page, we're just going to call current page.next, which is also nice about behavior subjects, just kind of being able to inline change what the value is, right? So that's kind of what's going on here. I've got the stack blitz just a bit further down, I think. Maybe I don't do a stack blitz until I have them all. But it's the same idea. I think we kind of went real quick through sorting and searching. And we can see at the end here, we have this nice example where we can still level up our guys. So we didn't remove any features. They're always being sorted by lowest attack, I think. So that's why they're changing as we go. So that feature is still in place. We can search for...
is that stored icon something that you added?
I think it's like Unicode, actually. Oops.
Right, but is that something that you added, or is that something that the table provided to say, hey, you're sorted on that column, let me go ahead and throw that next to the definition?
That, I believe that's something I added. So I just said, so I have like a behavior subject, another one, to just kind of control or to remember who the, let's see, I gotta make this a lot bigger. There we go.
Perfect.
So let's see, I think I just have sort direction and sort key. So 2 behavior subjects. Probably could just been one, but we'll just say, we'll follow this and say there's 2 of them. And so I'm pretty sure what I'm doing inside of that header, if I can bring that up. So here's my header, and for each one of these,
yep.
Yeah. So if the sort key matches, then we're going to say, yeah, here's if they're ascending, give it the ascending, and if they're descending, is that backwards? I'm not sure, but yeah, that's what we're doing there. So we're just sticking in the Unicode character there, based on whether. So if sort key is equal to the row or the column we're indexed on, as provided by the CDK column def. So if the sort key is equal to that, we know we're going to have to put something in there to reflect that it's what it's being sorted by. And then we're just using this kind of ternary operator to say, if sort direction is ascending, go up. Otherwise, we know it's descending, so go down. So that's how we're doing that.
Cool.
I don't know if y'all were able to follow that or not, but yeah, we're kind of getting in the weeds here. Did that make sense to you, Mike?
It does. What I'm also trying to grasp and understand is there's a lot of stuff in this data table that you're showing here right now. And what are the things that you've done based off of your coding, and what functionality is added by the CDK data table?
Right. So the functionality from the CDK data table is just, passing in the array, having the templates to kind of turn that array into a view. And then everything aside from that is just me doing other stuff. So the search form up here, I think that's just a run-of-the-mill reactive form.
Sorry. You said just. Now that's giving you a whole lot right out of the box. It's not like just giving you stuff. It's a whole lot that's coming to you for not a whole lot of work. You have a very functional table without adding a whole lot of code.
Absolutely.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the CDK data table also provide virtual scrolling support?
I don't think it does. When Bonnie and I were looking at it, that was like one of the pieces of it. So the CDK offers virtual scroll, but I don't think it works with the table yet. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I looked at that, so that could have been something they added. But when they first added virtual scroll, there wasn't a nice way of using that with the table. So we were kind of hacking away. One of my other examples, I might get a chance to show. I don't think we're going to get to it, but I'm doing something similar here. So I've just got a huge data set. If we go in and inspect, I'm going to have to blow this up for y'all. Inspect. So I only have a certain number of table rows I'm showing on screen. I think my data set's like 10,000, maybe 100,000. So as I scroll, I'm going to kind of prune, and all I'm doing here is I'm subscribing to the how far I am in terms of the scroll the scroll data that this is giving off. So every time I scroll, it's like giving me a new value. I think we can see in terms of how far I am. So I'm doing some math to turn that into a percent. And then I'm saying, based off that, here's an approximate index of where I think I'm at. I'm going to pad it like, I think I pad it like 25 above and 25 below. And that's kind of what gets us to where we're at here, where we're getting this kind of nice virtual scroll.
And that's an observable enacting upon the data that's being bound in the data table.
Yes. So there's, if we were to look at the code, let me see if I can bring that up. That's from my other example. Let's see if I can get to this guy.
I totally took you off topic, and I apologize. But
no, it's cool. I was hoping I could
get a cool example.
This stuff. Here, let's do this and this. I comment out a whole bunch of stuff. So I just say, and I'm kind of like treating this almost as a script. So this is very hacky. But I think what I'm doing, so that I'm taking the scroll dispatcher, I'm subscribing to it, which again, I probably should be mapping it. But I say, here's my runway remaining, percent of runway consumed, percentage of runway. I'm doing the same thing I prescribe against. So I'm saying, here's the percent of runway I'm at. And I just combine that with my heroes. So in this case, it's just an array, I believe. Or no, I do make an observable for it. And so I believe what I'm doing is I'm just combining the observable of my table source combined with the percentage I'm at. And that's how I'm just kind of padding on top and below. So we only kind of pollute the DOM with enough stuff to make sure, someone could reasonably scroll without, without too much stuff. I think the virtual scroll that the CDK provides has some nicer events coming out of it too. So you can kind of like hit an API, an external API to ask for new data. Which is a little bit different than this, because this all assumes we have all the data before we start. So, yeah, does that make sense? I feel like I've sprung that example entirely with that not enough context. But do you understand what's going on there?
Absolutely, yeah. I appreciate you taking the time and deviating over and showing that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think there's a lot of really neat, interesting stuff to show here. I'll take us, because I think we're about wrapped up with this. Check out the article and check out Jeff's video if you're more interested in this, because it kind of gets more in depth with the form control. It's just another observable here because it's a reactive form, and we're turning this into observable data too with our pages, and it all just kind of, it's so nice because it feels like you just kind of set things up and then it just goes. And that's what's so neat about ArcsJS, I think. You set up your machine, and if you built it right, things just kind of work. And it's a really great feeling. So I had to
do something I had done a few years ago.
Yeah.
With a different grid solution, but I basically want to re-implement it with the CDK data table. was basically dynamic filters based off of what column and data are there to be able to filter the data within the table.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a really powerful tool for doing like more custom stuff like that. I think for like getting something out of the box working real quick, like something like AG Grid is a great solution for that. But I feel like this just gives you so much control. And if you have a good grasp of RxJS especially, it comes pretty cheap, right? Like it's pretty easy to just create an observable of an array to make things nice. This is an example I got into with Bonnie a little bit. So this was an idea I had for I watch esports. I watch League of Legends online. Do you watch too, Justin? I see you nodding.
I don't watch League of Legends, but I play a lot of first-person shooters and stuff like that. So
okay, so you watch like CS:GO and stuff like that?
I've been watching a lot of Apex lately, and
cool.
Fortnite and stuff. Yeah.
My kids are really into Apex right now. But yeah, so the idea with this is I watch League of Legends a lot. I watch the pro circuit, the NA pro circuit a lot. But I never watch them live, right? Like I always happen to watch, like to catch them on YouTube kind of when I have a chance, when I have an hour somewhere. So I'm a nerd, so I really like stats. So I want to know the stats, but I don't want to spoil it for myself. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Jeff. Jeff just gave me something neat. Anyways, so what I'm doing here.
Tell Jeff we're still live. Tell him we're still live.
We're still live, Jeff. He gave me bourbon. I think it's to calm me down. Anyways, I kind of have this like view. So on the left-hand side here, you can see the current standings. So just very simple stats, really, just wins and losses. And on the right-hand side here, I'm kind of using ngRx to set up my store. And I am just what happens is at the end of the day, I'm firing this action here. So the action affects user data to say, for this user, I've recorded that I've seen this game now. And so what's happening is you'll see as I click hide and show, my standings on the side is automatically updating, which is instead of like managing all this stuff inside the component, what's interesting about this is I'm just leveraging an RxJS store, or I'm sorry, an ngRx store. And I've just written a custom selector that'll take the contents of my store, distill it into this nice array of standings, and then I just kind of shove that into my data source. So if I bring up code, where'd it go? Standings.
As that's coming up, so you're able to get the results from the individual games so that you can update this as you watch, is what's happening?
Yeah, so right now you kind of have to click the button to say I've watched this game or I haven't, and that's the ngRx store is inside of the selector. It's going to look at the user data. It's going to look at all the games results it kind of has in its store. And for right now, I'm just kind of assuming everything's client side. So I'm just kind of pushing a whole bunch of data into the store at startup. And then as I mark one of these as results, my selector is going to look at user data and see, if we look at my state, my user data now has games watched, and this is kind of like indexed by sport and by tournament, but it's watched a game at this ID. So then inside of my games, I'm using ngRx entities library to generate all this stuff. So I know from this index, and this is my ID here for this particular game, go ahead and make it so that when we create this array for the standings, go ahead and add that game into it. And this is a very simple example of getting it to work to show the standings, but we could take the same concept and apply it to more interesting stats. Like for League of Legends, it's like what champions were selected, because that's a big thing, or what items did they buy, or how much did one team win by, and that kind of stuff. So you can see this is kind of my standings component right here, and this is all the TypeScript I've written for this component in particular, because it's all kind of in this select standings selector. So you can see same deal with the columns. I still have to specify what columns I have, and then if we go into the template, it looks very similar to this example we just kind of walked through. There's my data source, defining each column, and this one actually has some interesting stuff, I guess, because I want to show NA if they don't have a valid win percentage, so if they haven't played any games yet. And yeah, and so you'll see it's really nice because we kind of delegated this select standings to inside of our store code, which I think is the better solution, right? Because we're wanting to manage our data in one place, and then we're kind of what's real neat about ngRx is it feels like we're composing this one really neat object that we just have a completely dynamic interface to how to react to it with our selectors and stuff. So that's all we do here. If we go into select standings, we can see, I think it's right here, actually. Taking a while for VS Code to find it, but yeah. So we're just combining a few other selectors. This one's a bit custom, but it's really not that special. We're just saying, give me user data that matches this tournament or that matches the sport in this tournament. Give me all of my teams. Right now, those aren't sectioned by sport or anything. Give me all of my games, and we're going to do this function to it and kind of map it and sort it, and we're going to end up with our standings array, and that's all that gets passed into our data table at the end of the day. So it's nice because this is also reusable. If I ever want to, bring in the standings again, I could just bring in that select standings selector and kind of take little pieces of data from it if I wanted to, or write my own selector, or do whatever I got to do. So it's really neat to see all this stuff kind of come full circle. And again, we're not really talking about tables here. We're talking about just RxJS, which is really neat. I think that's one of the strengths behind the API is just kind of being real simple, being real unopinionated. Give me an observable of an array, and you do whatever crazy stuff you want on top. So yeah, I like it. It feels good. I think that's probably all I got to show, Justin, if you want to let the share.
Well, Zach, I'm going to have to blame you because now.
What did I do?
Now I want to go play with this. I want to not do what I'm supposed to do the rest of the day. I want to go play and create a data table and then add the fancy little things that I want on top of it.
Data tables are so cool, I think. And I love the idea of AG Grid. But it just takes the fun away, doesn't it? It takes all the fun away of building all these neat features ourselves. So
yeah, it's always a challenge, right? I mean, trying to build that data table, and then you run into things, right? It's always kind of just, I guess, what you have on your plate and what you need to accomplish, right? And the cool thing about the CDK is that it allows you to solve those challenges that come up because it's kind of in your court and it's just doing the structure stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. I think you're still sharing your screen on your end.
Okay. I gotta get used to that.
You're writing too much code. You look just like VS Code right now.
Okay, let me okay, there it is.
There we go. Cool. All right.
Cool. Here's the perfect chart. I don't know if y'all can see that.
End of episode success.
Yeah. End of the 200th episode. It is such an honor to be on with you guys for this. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's been a great episode. I think what he's going to do, Jeff might charge you like you brought that out of a mini fridge, though. Just be careful about that.
Yeah. There might be a office cost for that.
Whoops.
All right. Get some picks if anybody has any picks, and then we'll call it a wrap. Mike, do you have anything to pick today?
I got one. A little-known developer has started a Twitch stream and did their second video coding cast of building a keyboard shortcut library in Angular. And I haven't finished watching it, so no spoilers, but his name's Shorty Dev, and I'll definitely post the link for that. But I've definitely been enjoying watching that a little bit off the track of where he started, and I'm excited to see him finish the tangent that he's on, or was it getting Jest set up as a testing library, and then bringing it back to work on the actual code. So excited to finish watching that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm probably going to pick that up again this afternoon.
Yeah.
Just a little spoiler. I kind of solved the Jest thing offline. Well, off stream. And so we're just going to jump right into the solution. And actually, I just ended up using NX to solve it.
Yeah.
So tune in. But yeah, thanks for the plug. Appreciate it. Having a lot of fun with that. It's pretty cool. So cool. Is that your only pick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'll give one other, because I tweeted about this yesterday. I think I did. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. But already got my tickets for Avengers Endgame. Super excited. But my pick is not actually the movie, but movie theaters with reserved seats. Like, is fantastic. No worrying about like who you're going to sit next to, or you're going to be able to find seats with the people that you're going with. There's just assigned seats, and you just go and you have this nice comfy seat there. So I'm super excited, mainly for the comfortable seat. I could care less about the movie. Just kidding.
I fully 100% agree. That's why I moved to the town I moved in our area, because they have a theater where you can order seats online and pre-order and reserve your seats. And that is just a must. I can't even imagine going into a theater where you have to go that day and then go find a seat that's open. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm driving about a half hour to get there, but that's all right.
So you're just going to see the movie. You're not going to do the marathon thing where some theaters are offering like 59 hours of all the movies prior to that?
Saw that. I heard Zach mention this earlier. I know you're in the same situation. I got kids. I can't disappear for 60 hours to go say, hey, I'm just gonna go watch a few movies. I'll be back in 4 days.
Dude, well, I got a stomach to feed and do other things. Like that's like a long time. I don't know.
I saw one article that said, hey, don't worry about it. During that marathon, you could sleep through Thor Dark World. I was like, you can't just call out that one movie. Oh, that's so bad. Not that I agree or disagree. Just you can't call out one specifically.
I had to figure out where they found one of the Infinity Stones. I think they found it in that movie. I totally fell asleep trying to watch it. So
yeah, it was Reality Stone.
Yeah. So
all right. Well,
cool.
We'll see. I'm sure people will share on the internet how the experience is, so we'll find out.
And if I could plug Connect a little bit, we're getting ready. I've been working on that with Narwhal for my Narwhal time. So we're working on the Connect platform, which is like this great resource for developers and for enterprise teams to kind of provide you a whole bunch of content like cookbooks and easy, quick examples and recipes on how to get stuff done, real world examples on how to get stuff done, as well as like curated content and exclusive videos, all that mess. So check it out. We're like launching, we're opening it up to just individual members, I think in like a month. So if you go to connect.narwhal.io, there's a little place to sign up for the waiting list. And as soon as we open that up, we'll send you an email so you can create your own account. So go do it. It's cool. Yeah, I think there's some really neat stuff in there. And hopefully I'll be able to add some stuff like these examples into it. So cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. All right. Well, Zach, thanks a ton for sharing your time, coming on here, being on our 200th episode. That's awesome. But we really appreciate you taking the time to share this content with us. And thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yes, absolutely. But Justin, do you have any picks? I want to give you a chance to be able to share your picks if you have any.
I see. I normally just do this because then like I don't have to have a pick because I'm just asking other people for their pick, right? But I am going to pick along the same lines that Aaron Frost. He's also streaming code at FrostyDev. So that's Twitch TV/FrostyDev. And so I'm going to plug him and his stream. He did one on Angular Elements the other day. I'm guessing he's probably going to do something again this week. So yeah. Check that out. So there you go. That's my pick. How's that?
Thank you. I appreciate it. And actually, because of the two of you, I did at least change my username to BroccoDev.
On Twitch?
On Twitch, yes.
Okay, yeah. We're trying to get that momentum going. Like if you're streaming dev content, like slap that dev on the suffix of it. It's pretty cool. All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks. We will catch everyone on the next episode. Later.
See you guys.